you can really express yourself, voice your opinion for or against, let's say, a politician, a policy, and it's perfectly fine. Other parts of the world, you won't do that, but you still have a certain amount of freedom. So I think that that's one thing that I've noticed as I've lived in different parts of the world is freedom is very, very different. And it is something I miss. In the States, we got to take a step back. And going back to that word freedom, it's a word that generations upon generations have fought and died for. And it's something today that seems to be taken for granted in a sense. And I think it's something people need to understand they have to hold on to.
This is Dunagun Kaiser, founder of Liberty and Finance. I'm now a licensed gold and silver dealer with Miles Franklin. Call me directly for the physical gold and silver that you need at the best price with personalized, private service from one of the oldest and best respected companies in the business. 30 years strong, A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, 0 complaints, licensed and bonded, insured delivery or vault storage or IRAs, excellent prices, privacy and confidentiality, pay by check, money order, ACH or wire, satisfaction guaranteed. Call me directly at 419-819-9209 or my associate at 310-562-6400 or email us at kaiser@milesfranklin.com. Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We have a first-time guest today. This is Patrick Vierra. He is the host of Silver Bullion TV, also affectionately known as SBTV, and he joins us this Thursday, December 3rd, 2020. Patrick, it's great to see you again. We saw you on the Miles Franklin Mugs and Medals episode together, and glad to have you back as a one-on-one interviewee on our channel.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me here. As you mentioned, first time guest, first time anywhere. Really, this is something totally new for me to be on the other side of the camera now.
Well, we're glad for your presence here. A lot of our viewers have been mentioning that they get a lot of good information from SBTV. There's a little bit of confusion sometimes because there's an American bullion dealer, SD Bullion, and so SDB sounds like SBT. So people get a little bit confused, but Silver Bullion is a different organization. Can you tell us just a moment about Silver Bullion, and then I want to ask you how you got into that.
Okay, Silver Bullion, we're sort of two things. We're a precious metals dealer and storage company in Singapore. Actually, the safe house is the name of our vault, I should say. So we do store bullion from international clients as well as local clients. And at Silver Bullion, this is where we basically buy and sell gold and silver. But I think more importantly, we've really transitioned over into systemic wealth protection. Seeing all the things going on right now, it became part of our goal, perhaps a mission to really help people understand what's going on. And there are things that you can do, and there are opportunities that are going to come. And so within that, we started up sort of an outreach where we decided to go ahead and create a YouTube channel and again, just to again, bring forward these things that are happening in the world where things look like they're going to lead to. And from the average Joe to the very wealthy guy, there are things that you can do to help yourself.
You know, your involvement there as SBTV as the host is a little bit like what I do on Liberty and Finance, and everybody has their own path to this because this is a really unusual, this is really a niche job. When you ask some kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was thinking, originally I thought, like a gas filling station attendant, and then I thought, no, that's not good enough. I want to be a engineer, and I want to be a scientist, and I want to be an inventor. So, everybody thinks of something they're going to be when they grow up. But how did you find your way to being a host of one of the most popular independent media channels about silver bullion? That's very specialized.
Yeah, thanks. It is, and I can appreciate everything you said as it applied to your path moving into this. For me, I was working at a smaller bullion shop in Singapore, and then things unfolded where there became a bit more more opportunities. And then I moved over into Silver Bullion. And one day, um, my colleague Vincent, he asked me, if I watch guys like you and other guys on YouTube, and I'm like, yeah, of course. And he asked me, do you think we can do that? And nonchalantly, I'm like, yeah, of course we can do that. And I didn't think this was really gonna, happen. And then day by day, he'd come in and okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. So I need you to do this, I need you to do that. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I kind of took this half seriously at first, but now it's real. And so your focus really shifts. And but the good thing is, as I said, because I started in that smaller shop, you have a lot of one-to-ones with people, and you get their feel, their vibe, what they're looking at, what they like, what they don't like, what their fears are, and so that easily transitioned over into SBTV because I really understood coming from that small shop what's on people's minds, what they like, what they fear, the opportunities they see, and but to back up a bit further, how I got into precious metals, that's a story in and of itself. My wife, I don't want to bore your viewers too much,
No, I
but my
think they'd
wife,
be very interested in knowing about this. Would you share it?
yeah, sure. She one morning we're having breakfast, and she tells me, you know, you always help out other people to make money. Don't forget us. And when a wife says that, you listen, right? So I tell her okay, and she says maybe you should pray on it. And at that time I was I don't know if I could say I was a Catholic because I lucky if I went to church on Christmas and Easter, if even that. But I did. I prayed on it, and I woke up the next morning. We had breakfast, and I tell her, okay, we got to start buying silver and gold. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I said, hey, you asked me to pray on it. I prayed on it. I slept, and that's what I got. Start buying silver and gold, specifically more silver. And so we did, and I didn't know anything about it. And then I started looking into it, and then you come across the David Morgans, the Mike Maloney's, Peter Schiff's, all these guys, and then you realize, hey, wait a minute, I'm actually doing the right thing here, and you start to understand, Federal Reserve and all of these things, and even more so, you understand I'm absolutely doing the right thing. And as I was watching guys on YouTube, a lot of times you'd often hear them say, get your financial house in order and get right with God. A lot of guys would be saying, get yourself right spiritually, get right with God, and that opened up, another chapter for me in this journey where, okay, what is all this talk about get right with God? And so one day she brings home a Bible, and I don't like reading, and for some reason I picked it up, and 3 months I read it cover to cover, and I understood sound money through the Bible. I actually understood sound money just as much as I picked up from YouTube, where scripture would say things like money needs to have a just weight, just measurement, and that's pretty much the definition of sound money. And so you you went fully into it, and you realized things like gold and silver, they were meant to be money.
It's interesting when you mentioned money should be just. One of the moral implications of that is that if you cheat a working person out of their just wages, you're actually stealing some of their life. You're taking, whenever you take something that doesn't, it gets back to that thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not steal, because you're basically taking part of what they have devoted. We all have a very limited life. We don't know. Nobody has tomorrow. We've had good acquaintances, close friends, and people who we've known for years. And long before you would have thought their time was due, they may have succumbed to an illness or to an accident or something like that, and suddenly they're not there anymore with their family. And so our lives are limited, very limited. And as we're expecting the birth of our 7th grandchild next month, and it's such an immense blessing. But I just blink and I think, wait a minute, I just blinked because I was the one having the babies, and my parents, and now all of our parents have passed away and that kind of thing. So life really, really, really does move very quickly, faster and faster as the years and the decades go by. So anyway, since we have such limited time, each day and each moment is precious. So to have taken that from someone is something that you can't return. You have no right to do. So that's gold and silver as traditionally recognized as sound money, our way of protecting the individual, protecting our lives and our livelihood. So I really respect that awareness that came to you. I wanted to ask you also then, why Singapore? Did you grow up there, or is that are you a transport? Why Singapore?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've lived in Hawaii all my life. In 2005, I came over to Singapore. The reason was because I had gotten married in 2004. My wife's going to kill me. I think it was 2004. And it was still pretty recent, from 9/11. And, following 9/11, government pretty much made immigration a very, very difficult thing to do. And so trying to get my wife over to come to the U.S. and stay there and we start our family, it just was incredibly difficult. So I left Hawaii, uprooted, left everything behind, and went to Singapore to stay with her, to be with her. And so that's how I ended up in Singapore. A lot of expats, they come to Singapore, they have a job lined up, they have connections, a network all ready to go. In my case, there was really nothing, complete leap of faith, just trying to do the right thing.
Wow. Well, we wanted to give you a chance to respond to some viewers' questions because there have been plenty submitted, and you've went way beyond the bar here because you already wrote out responses to most of those on there. So guys, look on our YouTube channel. Usually when the interview happens, then I take down the previous call for questions because we solicit viewers' questions prior to an interview. I'm going to leave this one up because it's so informative to be able to read, Patrick, your written answers to your responses to some of these questions. But one that jumps out at me right away on the list is something that I get asked a lot, and I know a lot of people are curious about this because we've seen a lot of volatility in both gold and silver. We had like almost 3/4 of a decade there where we were just in this slump in the middle of what David Morgan kept telling us was a bull market, but it didn't feel like one from 2012 to 2019 beginning or 18. But so Nathan asks, if the precious metals bounce back and gold, say, hits 2,200 again here in a couple months, will silver lag again, or will we see something different? What's your thoughts on that?
I think if it comes back up to that 2,200 level, I think what we're going to see or hear is that word confirmation. I think we're going to get confirmation that it's real. It hit that target, it came back down, and it hit it again. And that's confirmation. So within that, I think you're going to see a lot more guys starting to move into precious metals because now it's confirmed. And I think you're going to see the average Joe, like me, we're going to move into silver. And I think you're going to see the very savvy investor, he's going to understand things like the silver to gold ratio, and he's going to move into silver. And I think when you have the two of us together, I think you're going to see that really start to push up the silver price. So I think this time around, if gold hits 22, I think you're going to see silver definitely get past, 50% off its all-time high, because last time we only made it up to about 29, just under 30, and its all-time high was about 50. Also, actually, maybe we'll see it get past 30 this time. I should say. I think that will definitely happen this time around.
Part of what we have to talk about, I think, just for a minute here, is about investor psychology, or would you call it saver psychology? Because with gold, you often have people who are savers. They're trying to protect their net worth. They're trying to protect their savings. Once people wake up to the realization that cash is trash, in the sense that, as Robert Kiyosaki is known to say, is that our policymakers, I won't call them our leaders, and heaven knows we've got a whole infamy around how the whole central banks have had their way with civilizations throughout the millennia, but those who are the gatekeepers of our currencies have a policy of destroying the value of our currency. They're just arguing about how fast to do that and how much to admit it. And we've had John Williams from shadowstats.com on, and that's one of his things they say is, well, even when they tell you their headline numbers, they're admitting that they're destroying your currency, but they're not telling you the truth about how fast they're doing it. So given that backdrop, the desire for people to protect themselves by not trying to store their money in something that's being destroyed, right in front of their eyes, but to put it in someplace safe. That's often the gold. One of the reasons that people seek out a safe haven as gold. Silver sometimes, as Rick Rule brings out the investor sometimes in people, and they'd like to take part in some momentum rally that's going to outpace gold, so that then they could perhaps swap over and have more gold than they would have otherwise. So that gets back to what you were saying about silver rising faster and farther. But one of the things you mentioned that I thought is worth bringing up is that people, like recently, just last week, we had this smackdown of metals over the past maybe 2 weeks, you'd say, and silver down into the mid-20s per ounce spot price in 2022 and change in the U.S. And during the calls we got from clients during that time were remarkable, because there was this split. There were people who were calling because they were eagerly jumping on a dip to acquire more at what they saw as a value price, and there were others who were saying, perhaps I did the wrong thing. Perhaps I shouldn't have done this. Look how volatile it is. And then, like, as you say, when it turns around and gold's passing 2,200 again, and as David Morgan says, silver's passing 30, and you get this confirmation, people will end up being, okay, now I'm sure. Now it's the right thing to jump onto. And it's like, well, dang, you at 22 and a half, they had all their doubts, but at 30, they're going to think it's a better purchase. Do you see that in your experience as far as this sort of backwards psychology?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You get guys who, we've had that as well. When silver went down recently, they were pretty unhappy, questioning their investment. And then you had other guys who were piling in. They were thrilled that they can now go ahead and get it at this price again. And so you do see two sides. But I think, whether you were happy or whether you were not happy, you have to go back to the fundamentals of why you bought silver, why you bought gold, what are precious metals, what do they do? Fundamentals are still there, still the same, hasn't changed. The difference is, I think the psychology, when it comes to precious metals, it's an investment / insurance. So it really depends which side their slider is moving to. Is it moving more to the investment side, more to the insurance side? And that's something with gold and silver, as buyers, as owners, as holders, we often are in a bit of a tug of war with. We want to see the investment side go up. And when it goes up, we want it to come back down so we can buy more. And then we also realize it's true, right? It goes up and we're like,
that makes perfect sense. Oh, the train left the station. Come back. I want to get on. Yeah.
Yes.
I want to get on more.
It happens, and I'm the same way. I'm no different. I like to see it go up, confirmation, but then I'm like, no, can you just come back down a bit more, because I'd like to buy more. But then, that's the investment side. And then the insurance side, well, you add on to your insurance policy. So you're happy about that. You got more insurance at a cheaper price. And then sometimes you'll think, am I really going to need this insurance, because I could be putting my money elsewhere in equities markets or things like that. So going into precious metals, if you are letting your emotions drive you, you're always going to be in a tug of war. If you just let the fundamentals stay in place and understand why you bought them, you won't be so much in that tug of war. So it really depends on, as you say, the psychology of the investor.
You just reminded me of something, because you mentioned the conversation you had with your wife after she told you to pray on it, and you did, and you got some guidance. My wife and I, it's taken us years to get to the point where we're both on the same page, that when we purchase precious metals, we're actually just moving our savings to someplace that's more stable. It's a savings. It's not like you're buying. So you're not spending. That's the thing. That was the key thing. I don't want to spend our money. I want to save our money. And as soon as we got close as soon as we got on the same page about that, we're not spending our money, we're saving our money. Oh, then it's fine. Yeah, let's do it. It's like, okay.
No, it's exactly the same with my wife and I. And I will say this: if you are going to go into precious metals, talk to your spouse. Let your spouse know what you're going to do and why. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a gentleman come in and buy 5 kilos of silver, go home, come back the next day, and my wife, she'd rather go on holiday or she'd rather have something else than buying precious metals. And so the guy's got it right. I mean, generally speaking, as a man, our job is to protect and provide for the family, correct? So this is what he did. But his wife, she didn't understand precious metal. She didn't understand the whole printing of money and all of these things, and she just saw it as, hey, if you had $5,000 to spend, why don't we go on vacation instead or something like that? So it's important to talk to your spouse.
Back to the psychology and what it means, what the meaning of all this is to us. There's a question from a viewer, Fred Flintstone, who says, people say they wouldn't want to live in a $50,000 gold world. So people are thinking about catastrophes or social breakdown or civil war or depression or whatever it is. So people say they don't want to live in a $50,000 gold world, but Bitcoin at $20,000 is a bargain? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're living in a $20,000 Bitcoin world. We see it, and in this $20,000 Bitcoin world, which is, let's just call it a $2,000 gold world, I think we have a pretty fair amount of chaos already going on in the world. Whether it's what we hear from the World Economic Forum, whether it's what we hear or see with the stability of elections, whether it's the dollar, the value of the dollar, whether or how it's going to be challenged. The Swiss system will be challenged with Instex, INSTEX from Europe. There's a lot of things that are already brewing in a $20,000 Bitcoin world, $2,000 gold world. So if you go to 50,000 gold, and let's just say that means 25 times more the chaos, I suppose you could say. Yeah, there are a lot of things that probably would happen to get from this 2,000 to 50,000. And, wealth is going to be transferred. I won't use the word destroyed. To a lot of us, it may feel it got destroyed, but it's definitely going to be transferred. And that's where you need gold or silver as that vehicle to help you get from here to there. Otherwise, your wealth is going to be transferred somehow, somewhere to some place. So you need that vehicle. But I do think there are going to be opportunities along the way in that, we are going to see probably some sort of hyperinflation if gold got to 50,000. And I think, guys are going to be seeing really cash is trash, and they're going to be looking to get out of fiat. And the only way, probably one of the only ways, they're going to have to use their current assets in order to get real money, to get something like gold and silver. So guys who are holding gold and silver, you often wonder about exit strategy and things like that. I think what's really going to happen is people will be coming to you with assets to get real money, to buy real hard things like commodities. So I think in that sense, it's not so much where you hold gold and silver and what am I going to do with it? What am I going to do with it? I think it's more just sit tight. People are going to come to you and you're going to find opportunities within that.
You just made me remember that I wanted to talk with you about that thought process of strategically thinking ahead. None of us can predict the future perfectly. We don't know. What we do know is that there are these unprecedented distortions, unprecedented strains, unprecedented debt levels, unprecedented low interest rate environment, all these artificial factors that are bearing on us and just stretching and distorting and twisting. We could go on and on. The list goes on. In that environment, we know something different is going to happen in the future, and there's going to be aspects about it that are going to be very, very disruptive. Okay, so when people are thinking about what type of bullion to purchase or what type of sound money, one of the things that they often, I think, make a mistake about, and this happens in conversations that I have with clients, and I'm wondering if you face this as well, is they're thinking about their own preferences. They're thinking about, well, what do I like, or what do I think about? And rather than, what is the next person going to trust? And what is the next person going to think about? And imagining if the reason they're doing this for insurance is, in other words, if times get really tough, or things go really difficultly, or there's new currency and now the old currency is gone, and now all these things, they're not thinking the next pool of buyers to give themselves the optionality. I guess that's what I'm really trying to say, is that when we don't know the future, how to leave your options open as much as possible. And so that's one of the things I at least encourage people to do. We don't give direct financial advice, but I just encourage people to think about how many options do you want to have of the people that you might want to trade with in the future, because you're not going to want to maybe keep that metal forever. There may be a piece of property, or there may be something else that you want, some service or some whatever, be able to travel from a place to another place or something. And so you got to be thinking, what will that future person, in a time of distress, in a time of distrust, what will they trust? What will they recognize? What will leave your options open for that? And one of the questions that was raised by a viewer you had mentioned to me specifically pricks at this point, and I wanted you to get your chance at it. Mike C. says, do you prefer gold eagles or gold buffaloes, and why?
Yeah, it's a great question. It seems like a simple question, maybe somebody's personal preference, but the real reality behind it is there are places in the world, Singapore as an example, where for gold to be investment grade, it has to be 9995 and above, which is a gold buffalo, 9999, 4 nines. When you have a gold eagle, even though it's 1 ounce of 49 gold, because it has that extra added silver and copper, the overall metal content then becomes 916, 917 for that gold coin, which then makes it in Singapore not an investment grade metal, and it's subject to being taxed. And this is the thing. In the US, you treasure those gold eagles, but the rest of the world may not see it as investment grade precious metals. And for that reason, I would say gold buffalo, because of the 4-9 metal content. And it's not an easy thing for guys back in the States to hear. But again, having options, one of those options is you need to take a step back and look at the rest of the world, where your buyer might be from, where you might end up, and understand that the rest of the world sees it as 395 or 4 nines and above as being investment grade. And so again, for that reason, I'm a fan of buffaloes over gold eagles.
I will echo one thing that you said, because not only in Singapore, but Canada is admired within the U.S. As a safe and politically stable, financially stable banking system, and they have vaults there. But the Brinks, for example, vaults in Canada, in fact, other Canadian vaults, you can't vault store anything that's not pure fine gold there. So yeah, and there's also the VAT, the value added tax, that gets imposed on entry to the country if it's not considered investment grade. So and then on the flip side of that, I had a client who lived in southern Texas in the U.S. that called me and said, hey, I was trying to sell some Canadian gold maples, which are fine and all that, to my local coin shop in southern Texas. And I showed them to the coin shop owner, and he didn't want them. And I said, why not? They're one of the most respected coins in the world. He said, my local clientele are looking for American-made coins. They recognize the gold eagle because it's American-made. And if I buy these off of you, they're going to sit on my shelf. I'm not in the business to hold stuff sitting on my shelf. I need to turn it quickly in order to keep my inventory light. And I can't afford to hold on to these long enough to waiting for the special buyer. And that's the other thing, when people have looked at special commemorative issues or private minted things or whatever that are really little unique or whatever, there's that question is, will the next person trust it? Will the next person recognize it? Or do you want to get something that's so that has such a reputation, such a heritage, such a reputation of trustworthiness that it's instantly recognized across the world? So It's not a simple question, and you're right. It really does limit your offshore storage options if you're not dealing with the highest purity investment grade metals.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, because you got to imagine somewhere down the road you may offload, or you may pass it, to the next generation. They'll pass it to your next generation. But the thing is, at some point it'll be offloaded, and what will people want at that point? What will they trust? What will they understand? And a lot of times you would go back to sovereign coins, U.S. mint coins, Canadian mint coins, Royal Mint coins, Perth Mint coins. They would probably be a little bit more easier for the buyer to accept than, let's just say, a generic round. It's not to knock any generic rounds or anything. I'm just saying you have to give yourself options, and understand what is taxable, what's not taxable. And again, if you're the buyer, you know nothing about gold and silver, and you see an American coin from the U.S. Mint, and you see a Tom, Dick, and Harry coin from Tom, Dick, and Harry Mint, let's say, you're going to feel more comfortable with the U.S. coin. Again, not a knock on generics.
Yeah.
They have a place, but just to say that, for people who don't understand gold and silver, they probably would prefer that. Whereas people who do understand gold and silver, they may not have so much of a problem accepting rounds.
We have the similar conversation around the sizes of products that people buy. They've got the idea quite often that they want to be very cost efficient. They want to get the most ounces of metal they can for their fiat, which is the right it's the right thing. One of the right criteria to think about. You don't want to be unnecessarily overcharged for something that's very expensive to get into, just because somebody tells you, oh, it's for sure unconfiscatable, or it's for sure rare and desirable, or something like that. But the people who are convinced that they can only buy 100-ounce bars, or 1,000-ounce bars, or kilo bars, or whatever it is. So we've had people ask for 400-ounce bars or 1,000-ounce bars, and they aren't necessarily thinking the next step ahead. They may be, but that still just it definitely limits your potential pool of who you could maybe trade or sell that to in the future. Because a major dealer will always purchase a valid product in any size or any form. But when we're talking about metals becoming much more valuable or perceived as much more valuable in terms of nominal cost in the future, the risk of transporting something that large, or shipping it, insuring it, and then having to find a buyer who really wants to buy the whole thing. Like if you want to go down to have a guy just fix your car for you so you can get out of town, and all you have is a 1,000-ounce gold bar, or a silver bar, may not be the most flexible in terms of giving you the most optionality. So that's one of the things sometimes people turn to U.S. junk silver, like the dimes and quarters, because they're really small. But what are your thoughts as far as sizes of products that give people more optionality?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm a fan of junk silver. I mean, I think, if things really do go bad, especially in the States, the first thing people are going to recognize as being money are the junk silver coins. And then they're going to recognize, hey, this thing is 90% silver. Then they're going to start recognizing, okay, a silver eagle, or things like that. So I think there's kind of a progression people will go through: junk silver, bullion silver, and then they may even be looking at something like Bitcoin, or a gold-backed type of token kind of a thing. But when it comes to bars and coins, liquidity is an issue, and I think it depends where you are. I think in certain places, liquidity for a LBMA bar might be kind of tough. In other places, there's definitely liquidity for it. So in Singapore, we're okay for the most part, and so guys are very comfortable buying 1,000-ounce bars. And it also depends on your outlook, where if you see you may have to use gold and silver one day, you want something divisible, which might be a 20-coin tube of eagles, or a 25-coin tube of maples, where you can use it piece by piece, instead of being, let's say, holding a 100-ounce bar and not being able to get change for whatever it is that you're trying to get.
Yeah.
So if you believe you may have to use your silver and gold, definitely get things that are easily divisible. Get things like coins. If, let's say, you're a bit more okay and you're really looking for that wealth protection part, then I think you'd be more comfortable getting the bars. So the trade-off is you're getting the bars a little bit cheaper, You get the wealth protection, but you may not have that barter ability where if
Mm-hmm.
things really went bad, I can't use this thing. And then if you buy coins, you're paying a little bit more on the premium, but you're giving yourself the option of being able to use that gold and silver. So it really depends on your personal outlook. I would say get both.
Yeah, it's not either or necessarily. That's right. And one thing you mentioned a minute ago about people perhaps not recognizing, I think you said Tom, Dick, and Harry mint rounds or something like that. Ironically, rules can change because we just saw in the last quarter the COMEX in the U.S. widely broadened their rules as which mints they would recognize as being viable for settlement of physical delivery on the COMEX. So it got easier. More mints that had ever been recognized before by the COMEX are now recognized as, okay, those are COMEX approved mints. But rules don't always get easier. Sometimes rules get harder. Sometimes rules get more restrictive. So just trying your best. We don't have a perfect view of the future. So you just try to look into the foggy crystal ball of the future and say, I don't want to unnecessarily limit my options going forward. So just...
absolutely. Absolutely. It's really going to be all about options. You have to have options. With comics, they're giving themselves options. They need more gold, more silver, in case people take delivery. But for the average Joe, may not know what comics is, but he will definitely know what junk silver is, and then progress into what a silver eagle is, what a gold eagle is. So I think within that, still having the options and you still have to have some sort of an understanding of what money really is.
Right. And that's something that we're all still on a journey of doing. And ironically, we're trying to do that. It's like this fish swimming upstream. We're trying to do that against the current of ignorance that's washing down over us from official sources or lack of any sources. If you just think about the progression of most school children and people that grow up in our modern culture, when do we ever get taught about what money really is, what it's supposed to be, the constitutional origins of it, the fact, Maurice Jackson from provenandprobable.com, who's a mentor of mine, he reminds us that the official definition of the U.S. dollar is a certain number of grains of silver. It's not a Federal Reserve note piece of paper. That is not a U.S. dollar.
Yeah, that is true. I have my official $2 US right here.
Okay, so folks, if you can hold that a little bit closer to the camera, maybe people can see.
It's in focus.
Yep, yeah, there's $2 US. If it's the correct number of grains of silver. So when people say, oh, the dollar is going to be destroyed, it's like, well, the correct and truthful constitutional dollar is not going to be destroyed. It's what's going to help us survive. But this Franken dollar that's been created by the Federal Reserve over the past century has already been mostly destroyed. Like, you can argue anywhere from 96% to 98% of the purchasing value has already been taken out of it since 1913 when it was defined. But if people want to protect themselves, what other thoughts than we haven't talked about come to mind that you discuss with people? Because you mentioned that people call you or talk to you with different questions or different concerns, or you spoke with people face to face with their different concerns. What emerges maybe as one of the greatest concerns or confusions that people have brought to you that you've helped them over the years to understand better?
That's a really great question. I think the concern, probably the biggest concern they have is they understand the money printing, how the national debt has just gone up and up and up. And they start to awaken to this, and they start to realize, if we print too much of this, how can it hold the value? Will other countries even want it? Will they want to buy U.S. treasuries or bonds or things like that? And so their biggest concern is what they've worked for all their life. How can they hold the value of it? Because they start to understand, if inflation comes, it's one thing. Deflation comes, that's another thing. Money printing, all of these things are not necessarily working in their favor. So their concern is, how do I get something outside of the financial system? So no matter what happens with fiat, with the currency, I'm generally okay because I've exchanged my currency for something real, something that has value. And so for these guys, the way they kind of put it is there's a time to make money and then there's a time to protect what you've made. And so what they do is they'll take those chips off the table and they will go ahead and put it in something that if anything happens in the fiat casino, they're okay. They're outside of it now. And so their biggest, that's really their big concern. You know, they worked hard for things and they just want to make sure government doesn't chip away at it through inflation and things like that.
Yeah, we had E.B. Tucker on was on our show, and he showed up. He showed a stack of dollars that was the price of gold per ounce when it was recalled by FDR in 1933, which was $20 per ounce of gold, and then he showed us the stack of dollars today. It was the time we interviewed him. It was like $1,900, which was the how many it took to buy the same ounce of gold. And he says, so which one of these has changed? Has the gold changed, or is the dollar changing right before our eyes? And it's happening right in front of our eyes. And yet most people, and most people, when we're going through tough times, oh, there's a hurricane, oh, there's a COVID infection, or whatever it is that happens, people think, yeah, the government should give relief and should give assistance and should bail out and should help people. I think they should do that. And what people aren't being told is, okay, we're going to take value out of your savings, out of everything that you've earned, and it's going over there, and it's not coming back. In fact, everything that you have in your savings account, your checking account, your retirement account, your Social Security check that you receive, or anything, all that's going to get less from here on forward because we're just pulling it right out of the dollar.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, inflation, a lot of times we don't necessarily understand it, and by the time we see it, it's really in motion. And by the time you see it, you've already had some of your wealth, your savings chipped away, and you can imagine what's being chipped away as well when you can't see it. And that's the whole purpose of it. They don't really want you to see it being chipped away, and you don't realize that until years down the road where, hey, this guy 20 years ago said, I'm going to have $1 million when I retire. And well, you retired, you got that $1 million nominally, but you can't buy the same things anymore. Back then, 20 years ago, you're like, great, I'm going to be a millionaire. I can live this way, live that way. Didn't happen. You've understood that $1 million cannot buy you the same things anymore.
Patrick, I'm really grateful for your presence here. I want to circle back for a last question to the personal side again that you were so generous to share with us in the beginning. Another question asked by Pabar, who says, what motivated Patrick to move to Singapore? I think you told us that, but what are some things that he misses about living in the States?
Oh, yeah. Quite a bit. I think I don't mean this in a bad way or anything, but freedom is defined differently through different parts of the world. Limited freedom in different places through the world. So, but people who grow up there may think it's freedom. They have 100% freedom, even though someone from the U.S. might think it's a limited freedom. So, I think that's one thing, where you can really express yourself, voice your opinion for or against, let's say, a politician, a policy, and it's perfectly fine. Other parts of the world, you won't do that, but you still have a certain amount of freedom. So I think that's one thing that I've noticed as I've lived in different parts of the world is freedom is very, very different. And it is something I miss. And of course, friends, family, things like that. I think, in the States, we got to take a step back and going back to that word freedom. It's a word that generations upon generations have fought and died for. And it's something today that seems to be taken for granted in a sense. And I think it's something people need to understand they have to hold on to because it's been said before the U.S. is the policeman of the world. Well, when you hear these guys talk about defunding the police, just think of it as taking away the U.S. If the world doesn't have a policeman, and some people don't like the policeman, some people do, but If you defund the police, you take police away from a city. Can you imagine what will happen? Well, globally, from a global perspective, if you take away the so-called policeman, and again, some countries may like that policeman, some countries may not. It works to their benefit, maybe it doesn't work to their benefit. But if you removed him, where do you think the world will go? I mean, I think you may have some sort of equalization for a while where everybody's happy, things are even, breath of fresh air. But we're humans. I mean, mankind, we always have to, somebody's always going to want power. You know, you have two companies that merge, one of the CEOs is going to want to have the power. And that's just the way it works. So even if, the world is fine, globalization, all of these things, somebody's going to come up and somebody's going to want that power. And so it's something, you, I think we all should consider. And I'm not saying there's any right or wrong in this. I'm just saying that's just the way humankind is. Somebody will want power.
You mentioned freedom of speech in the beginning there, or freedoms in general, I guess, and how in some parts of the world you can't speak out against the government, that sort of thing. It's really changing in the U.S. I've never seen it like this before. We've been doing this podcast since December of 2013, and we didn't have to used to worry about what we said. In the sense, you always have to be thoughtful about what you say, because you want to say things that are true. You want to say things that don't disparage people's character and that sort of thing, impugn their character. But now, in this contentious political climate and cultural climate that's been, in some people say, has been fomented, has been encouraged to fracture and divide us as people, it's the big tech censors who get to decide and the big media get to decide what is news, what is not news, what's covered, what's not covered, and what can be talked about, what can't be talked about. And even when you try to direct message someone, my wife almost every day throws up her hands and says, I just tried to send a private message to this person and the link disappeared. And there's a little opposing rebuttal fact checker article that popped up instead. So maybe the U.S. you left behind isn't quite the same as you remember it to be. So that's something, your message about we need to stand up for freedom, and that's something that we all need to be thinking about right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, just take a step back, and whether you like, let's just say, whether you like Trump or not, understand the president of the United States is being censored. And that's all you need to know, because if the president can be censored, you are not a problem where you can be censored even easier. And so when you really start censoring like that, especially up at the top, it's almost as if what they're telling people is, president is not important. We are. You're going to follow what we say. You're going to go along with what we do. And I don't know if that then becomes something above fascism at that point. I think it's just incredible that the president of the United States, you will not give him a platform and you'll censor him.
There was an article on Zero Hedge that went the next step from what you're saying, and it asked, if you don't think this is a problem, ask yourself, who are the we that are censoring the president of the United States? Who are they? Who hired them? Who gave them that direction? Who funded them? When you need to speak out, or something that you deeply care about needs to be talked about, will they support it or not in the future? Who are they? So it's chilling when you really let it soak in and not just think, yeah, this is going the way that I wanted it to go at the moment. That we had Dr. Edwin Vierra, a constitutional attorney, on, and he said these people are playing with fire, and that's where we can't even name the people because nobody knows. It's just this movement that's happening, and so people aren't questioning that. But that's a very thought-provoking way that you framed it. Oh, on that note, if you want to make sure that you don't lose contact with us in case we run into any difficulties with our platforming on YouTube, make sure you go to libertyandfinance.com, look over in the left-hand margin, put your email address in there, sign up for our free newsletter. It's free. We won't spam you, and it comes out 3 times a week. It'll tell you about every interview. It'll give you the details about the interview, any links that our guests share with us, and that's all free. So, Patrick, if people want to follow you and find out more about your work, where should they go?
You can email me at patrick@silverbullion.com.sg. You can just come to our website as well, silverbullion.com.sg, and we'll get back to you. I think we have a good habit of answering emails. We'll get in touch.
Well, I really appreciate, Patrick, and I know our guests, our audience does as well. You're joining us here. It's tomorrow your time already, but you made time for us, and we just appreciate this. Thank you for taking the position on the other side of the microphone and the camera from what you're usually doing. And on behalf of our viewers, I just thank you from the heart for having shared so generously with us, both on the personal side, the professional side, the perspective of speaking with clients, and the considerations that we all have to be thinking about our futures. So thank you for being here on Liberty and Finance.
Thank you for having me on, and I hope there was at least one little bit of information that I said that could have helped somebody. So just keep stacking, keep taking positions in silver and gold.
To acquire gold and silver, just go to libertyandfinance.com. When the main site comes up, click on Bullion Sales. That's libertyandfinance.com, Bullion Sales. You'll see my name, Dunagun Kaiser, my phone number, and my associate, Kaiser Johnson, his phone number, our email, libertyandfinance@protonmail.com.